For my final assignment for ethics in business, I decided to do the case of Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff was the founder of the investment firm Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, LLC. You may know Madoff because he created and operated possibly the largest Ponzi scheme the world has ever seen. He started this alleged business in the 60s with his wife, Ruth. His small firm began to attract attention when he guaranteed his investors a reliable 10% to 20% return each year, and he also targeted celebrities to create an exclusivity about his firm. By the end of the 1980s, Madoff's firm was trading more than 5% of the total trading volume of the New York Stock Exchange. His company continued to thrive by introducing computer technology for trading. This formed what we know today as NASDAQ, of which he sat as chairman for over 3 years. In short, Madoff's scheme basically included him taking the money from his investors, putting that money into his private accounts, and then paying back his investors with their own money or that of another investor instead of the profits that he was supposedly acquiring. He claimed that he could have consistent performances regardless of any market conditions. He hid this scandal behind a strategy he claimed to be using called the split strike investment strategy. This is it's a sketchy form of investment strategy where it minimizes risk for investors and paybacks on certain stocks that you invest in based on put options offered by Madoff's firm. So once the stock market crashed in 2008 and even the S&P stock ratings were falling, his firm's numbers stayed consistent. Now this didn't make sense to anybody, so all of his investors panicked. And once his investors panicked, they all came to redeem their investment at once. Madoff obviously could not pay them because there was just too many of them. So he confined his Ponzi scheme in his two sons, Andrew and Mark, who had been working for him within the firm. Both of his two sons, Andrew and Mark, turned their father into the SEC later that day on December 11th, 2008. Madoff was arrested the next day and pleaded guilty to 11 felony accounts, including securities fraud, mail fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, false statements, perjury filings with the SEC, and theft from employee benefit plans. At the end of the investigation, the firm's filings showed a report of over $65 billion stolen from investors. Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison as a 71-year-old, and there today is still a Madoff victim fund, an attempt to pay back the investors of Madoff's destructive scheme. This scheme may have started once the company was opened. Filings from the firm point that the scheme may or not have started around the early 1970s, which is only a couple years after the firm opened up. Madoff may have never even had the intention to open a sound or legal firm. Nobody really knows why he did it. The scheme he embedded into the American economy caused billions of dollars in damage and even led to the suicide of one of his sons and the suicide of many more victims who lost everything due to this scandal. It is clear that Bernie Madoff's unsustainable greed blinded him of any integrity, temperance, or sense of worth for the common good. Madoff robbed people blind without a care in the world. He lied and committed fraud until he went from being a multi-billionaire to a disgraced, imprisoned crook. This is precisely the behavior and attitude that all people, especially in the business world, even more so on Wall Street, should avoid. The only redeeming quality that arose from this controversy was a complete overhaul and restructuring of the SEC department to be more effective in the face of the biggest market crash the world has ever seen due to the financial crisis of 2008.